Welcome to the first edition of the Amazon Bioeconomy Innovation Investment Forum, which is brought to you by the initiative An Agreement for the Amazon and the Interstate Consortium of sustainable development of legal Amazon. We understand that the Amazon biodiversity contains unique and essential elements for the whole humanity to live better. Not only the fauna and flora are important to the health, but for the regulation of the climate in the world. But the people, the cultures, the arts, the soils, the waters, the cities and communities. We believe that keeping the Amazon sustainable and living involves everything and everyone who are here. We need to preserve the biodiversity, use the science and technology allied with the sustainable development, always looking at better conditions of life. We want not only to keep the forest standing, we want more standing forests, more sustainable and less social and territorial inequalities. We understand the Amazon bioeconomy and the Amazon and the economic and commercial activities from this diversity is a great ally to the sustainable development that we look for. That's why I invite you to participate in the Amazon Bioeconomy Investment Innovation Forum. We want to bring new voices to know different experiences and looks about this market and find synergies and pathways for a more prosperous and resilient Amazon. These are conversations for everyone, for those who look for investment, for those who look for options to invest, for those who propose public policies, and everyone who can understand more about Amazon bioeconomy. So shall we? Good morning, everyone. My name is Izabella Teixeira, and I'm here representing the Agreement for the Amazon, and I'm going to moderate this panel of number 16 that deals with the role of international cooperation for the structuring of bioeconomy market in the legal Amazon and in the Green Recovery Plan. We want to present the Green Recovery Plan prepared by the Interstate Consortium of the Legal Amazon and decides the role of the International Legal Amazon for the programs agreed upon by the states inserted by the GRP. We have three guiding questions. How significant is the investment in bioeconomy to the plan, to the Green Recovery Plan? How will the consortium bring innovative elements to the implementation of the GRP? And how can international cooperation act as an investor in pre-competitive arrangements that enable the full implementation of the plan? In this context, I have the joy to announce the panelists that will join us in this debate. First, we'll have Professor Laura Carvalho, Associate Professor from the Department of Economy of the University of São Paulo, my friend, Governor of Maranhão, Flávio Dino, also President of the Interstate Consortium of the Sustainable Development of the Go Amazon, and then we have Jens Brüggemann, Director of Biodiversity and Forest Programs of the International Cooperation German agency, and Sophie Naudeau, Manager Operation for the World Bank in Brazil. In this context, I would like to invite Professor Laura Carvalho for her speech about the scope of the Green Recovery Plan. So Laura, it's a joy to see you again, and the idea is that you can offer us a general overview in 10 or 15 minutes. So you have the floor and welcome again. Thank you very much, Izabella. I would like to thank the invitation to participate in this panel. My greetings to my fellow panelists. So the idea of the Green Recovery Plan in general, starting with the international experience in this topic, that has been gaining adherence to this plan after the pandemic. The idea is to understand that the transition to a low carbon economy that in general is focused on rich countries in their energy transition with lower carbon emissions can, while directing the public investments and private investments, can work as an engine to growth, of recovery of the income, the jobs, and it can perfectly, if it well articulated, it can become a strategy to fight inequalities and social exclusion. So the Green Recovery Plan is also understood as an inclusive recovery plan. And this idea that there is no opposition between making this transition to a green economy, understanding this concept as a low carbon economy that involves many aspects, including bioeconomy, this idea that the green economy is the cost or a hindrance that making this transition would be a hindrance to the development, I think this is a totally outdated idea inside the debate in the economic thinking. We have to understand that it's the opposite, that's making this transition, the necessary investments for this transition is capable of generating jobs in the short term and generating incomes and direct the economies to a long-term growth that is more robust, that brings more diversification of the productive structure, more added value. So what we understand as cost and how to protect the environment, as is protected the environment with something that jeopardizes the developments, now it is an opportunity. The investments in these areas are capable of generating jobs. So this idea, when you bring this image for the Brazilian context, especially in the Amazon, I think there are many specificities that are very clear. The concept remains valid, and what we understand is that this PRV that was designed with the same principle to articulate the combat to inequalities and generation of income and jobs in the short term, also thinking in a more diversified added value economy with capacity of export, etc. So the principle of this articulation between the growth agenda and the transition to a green economy is preserved, but you have many elements that are present in this context that make them different, especially the issue of deforestation. So when we look at the green recovery plans that has been developed in the different European countries, the United States, and Korea, with the Biden administration, now we can perceive this articulation between the job generation for this transition for a more sustainable energy matrix. But in our case, it is evident that we have more common elements. But we always see the deforestation as a central issue. We cannot think about a transition to a low carbon economy in the case of the Brazilian economy without thinking in breaking the deforestation. We know that although the deforestation and the activities associated with deforestation are activities that generate digital exclusion dynamics, and there are many different studies that shows that these deforestations do not lead to well-being or income per capita income. Although this is true, it is also true that the Amazon population, and when I talk about the population, I'm not only talking about the rural population in the forest, but also in the urban centers. There are many socioeconomic needs. We are talking about a region with low levels of formality in the labor market, of income, of access to basic infrastructure services, physical infrastructure like energy, internet, access to housing. So any indicator that you can get from the statistics, we will see that the Amazon region is in significantly lower than average levels. I think this combination, first, the challenge to change the way we understand the economic activity, breaking or neutralizing the illegal deforestation that is one of the main objectives of the Green Recovery Plan. So doing this the same way that we make economically viable and politically viable this strategy with jobs and well-being for the population of the urban centers. This is what makes this plan a little different and brings additional challenges if we compare the international experiences in this area. And it was based on that we drafted with the consortium a structure, diagnostics followed by the theme axis of what would be necessary to overcome this challenge in the short term or in the middle term in order to generate socioeconomic results in the short term, but also looking at a development agenda in the long run that can be on a development agenda that understand the Amazon as central for the Brazilian economy. We are not only talking about the random region. There are potentialities in this region that can serve not only the food safety, but also any other objectives of technology creation for the Brazilian economy as a whole. So this was organized after four axes that intersect with each other. There are processes that go through these processes and help us organize these plan and these strategies. So the first axis is the first one that is directly related to the fight the deforestation. So we are talking about projects that are classified the enforcement or to improve the enforcement and monitoring, whether it is technological or with people, or things related to the land regulation, everything that involves creating a framework that is necessary to fulfill the objectives to neutralize the deforestation. So this would be the first one that concentrates 1/4, according to the first phase, 1/4 of the resources predicted to this plan. So there are three other axes that can be classified in the socioeconomic development. The second axis that is more immediately related to this is what we call sustainable productive development. That includes bioeconomy, but it is not restricted to initiatives in bioeconomy. So this is related to the standing forest activities to explore the potentialities of items and assets and forest products that today we have the capacity to produce, but we don't have a lot of share in the international market. We also have the ecotourism and encouragement to these tourism activities. It also encompasses projects that can involve changing the processing of other activities as mining and other existing activities for these activities to become less emitters of carbon. So how do we make the activities, the agricultural and extractivist activities, has less emissions? So these are some of the activities to monitor the cattle and having to intensify the livestock. So there are many different initiatives that involve activities that are present and very relevant inside the export structure that can become less emitters of carbon and more aligned with this strategy to make the Amazon economy a green economy. Then we had the third axis of the plan that is related to green technology and innovation, and also training. Understanding that in order to create an agenda, there are elements and potentials that depend on investment in research and development that make us understand and how can we grow on the productive chain to produce more added value products inside this sustainable structure. So how to develop the capacity of the population so these jobs created in this process can be more qualified and the manpower can be more qualified for this transition, and also how to diversify the productive chain and how to find these products in the processes that are related to the use of this new green technology. And that's why this plan includes the support to research and articulations. Finally, the fourth axis of the plan, and this is also present in the green recovery plans all over the world, which also holds specificities in our case, in the case of Amazon, is the green infrastructure. What is a green infrastructure? This is usually a term put as opposed to the gray infrastructure. What is this? This is the infrastructure that provokes environmental damage. So the green infrastructure is the opposite. It is an infrastructure that creates possibilities for this green economy and this low carbon economy to thrive and to use all its potential without causing damage. So we are thinking, since physical infrastructure, access to energy, access to transportation, urban transportation, access to internet. So this first phase includes initiatives of connectivity that are necessary for the bioeconomy activities can be explored, considering that many times you need internet to make online sales and to have access to domestic and international markets. So this infrastructure of connectivity is critical, and the region is characterized in all of these areas for scarcity and gaps of these infrastructure, but also infrastructures, physical, but also social. Government, the Biden administration has been using the human infrastructure term. We were using social infrastructure, but what is this? We are also thinking about access to services from the population and access to education, health, housing. So this is also included and it is also part of this green infrastructure axis. Everything that is the base, it's almost like a starting point, so it is possible to use these dynamics. And the interesting part is that these investments in green infrastructures have high multiplying levels of job generation and income generation that generate in the short term benefits for the population. So at the same time that you are aiming at the long term, creating the necessary infrastructure for this new economy, you are also generating jobs in the short term, so green jobs. So this is what makes this axis so central in this strategy. So basically, this is what I had to say. I think that from that, the governor can detail where we reached in this first phase, in this first step, that is being formulated the portfolio of projects around these axis. But in fact, it seems to me that this is very strategic initiative when we think about international cooperation. That is the topic of the panel. Because we need to understand that this international cooperation that is interested in fighting deforestation in the Amazon needs to understand this fight for deforestation in a way that is articulated with the social economic objectives in order to make viable the enforcement of these objectives in a permanent way. So this is not something and resources that are directed only for an enforcement activity that is essential, but does not create the social conditions and the political conditions, and that the economy of the region can give all the incentives to these deforestation activities and create more opportunities and close regional inequalities and reach a strategy that has the understanding of the Amazon as many strategies for the Brazilian economy and for the global economy in the long run. So thank you again for the invitation, and I will wait the other speeches. Thank you, Izabella. Thank you, Lara, for your presentation. I think you made a big summary, not only the plan and the challenges that the plan brings, not only from the Amazon insertion perspective in Brazil of the future, where we are going as society in this century marked by the climate era and the digital era. This is where humanity is trying to look for interactions with the nature. And you put this in the international context. Although the world is discussing this post-pandemic build better, so we need to, the necessity, we need to look inside. So how we can coordinate this to dialogue internationally and make part of this construction with this new low carbon economy or the new economies that are coming. So we have a green, purple, white infrastructure and economy. We have a dynamics of changing the world and how the Amazon is aligned and how to put Brazil again in this proposal of the plan. I always like to say that the Amazon puts the Brazil in the world. Unfortunately, because of the deforestation, the world understands the Amazon in a very distinct way with the challenges that we have. On the other hand, as you said in your speech, it has a structuring part of this country, Brazil, that has to deal with new paths in the future and to stop the drawbacks that is unfortunately assuming being a protagonist in the Amazon with low visibility, with the deforestation that does not add the value to no one and draws from the societies, draws the well-being and the future of the society. In this context, I would like to invite Governor Flávio Dino to make his remarks. Good morning, Governor. It's welcome. He's also president of the consortium. He's the governor of the state of Maranhão and the extremely important leadership in these new moments of Amazon, these moments to track the insertion of Brazil in the world, not only from the integration of the Amazon with Brazil to be visible and to be part of the construction of the development of the country, but also in regional integration and the importance of the Pan-Amazon countries. And more than that, a Brazilian with a strong heart with his identity of Brazilianness. So you have the floor, Governor. We hope you can evaluate the political perspective of this proposal of the plan, and more than this, the political perspective of a qualified interlocution from the international community perspective about the future of the country, the future of Amazon, and how we have to make short-term measures to assure the right track. It's a pleasure to see you again. You have the floor now. Former Minister Izabella Teixeira, it's a great pleasure to see you again. Always revealing all the virtues that we know of dedication to the good causes of the Brazilian people, and I salute the other participants in the panel. Greeting Professor Dr. Laura Carvalho, just made her presentation of the main axis of the GRP, the Green Recovery Plan, to be launched on July 16th by the Consortium of Governors of the Legal Amazon. And I greet everyone who is following us. We are living a very difficult moment with the sanitary crisis, of course, the effects that we are seeing. This sanitary crisis also has a result with environmental topics as we know it. However, I would like to highlight that in the second semester now, unfortunately, most likely we'll have the intensification of the debates about the Amazon. We are already seeing this because of the indicators, the concerning indicators about deforestation and wood fire. And we also have an energy crisis related to the water crisis with obviously environmental dimension that is resulting in reasoning and saving of economy. These over taxes is a type of reasoning, but it is in a way that this is the frame that should challenge us not only to reflect, but also to transform the new paradigms with which we define public policies. Associated with this challenging situation, I mention one more. We have a conflict to increase in the Amazon. We saw this week the voting of a bill of law about the demarcation of indigenous lands that inevitably will result in some legal questionings because of the Article 231 of the Federal Constitution. This bill of law with questionable constitutionality has a direct relationship with the theme of the use of the Brazilian Amazon. However, therefore, nobody can debate Brazil without debating the Amazon. The issue is how to approach it. What we are proposing, and Laura has shown here with preciseness, with accuracy, is a regional development strategy that is compatible with the international commitments and with the constitutional rules to which Brazil is linked. It's not enough only to have an intensification of the law enforcement powers. So you enforce and arrest and or fined and everything is solved. But it's not, because most of the Brazilian Amazon are in the cities. It's urban. Some people think that the Amazon people live in the trees, but we need to understand the Amazon in its diversity. However, therefore, enforcing and arresting, punishing is necessary, but just not enough. On the other hand, the pilot projects are not enough as well. We know the importance of açaí, Brazil nut, babaçu, and the fishing products, and so on, in the Brazilian Amazon. We need to give more scale to that, to make more technologies viable, productive gains, access to markets. So this is not seen as a type of compensation. So the person is there with an existential drama, and they say, no, I'm helping a community from the Brazilian Amazon. We think this is very valuable. Everyone who helps the Amazon communities, we value that and we think that, but it is not enough, unfortunately. The Green Recovery Plan responds to a higher level of the reflection about the Brazilian Amazon.
Around these four axes that have been zoomed by Professor Laura, what is our intention with this plan? Have alliances made national and national levels to leverage activities capable of facing the socioeconomic and environmental challenges in the Brazilian Amazon. It's a completing approach that escapes some wrong positionings about the Amazon. Example, unfocused rhetoric about sovereignty, as if the international concern over the Amazon would be a violation of this sovereignty. No, it's not. It's not a violation to own an exclusive powers of Brazil over this parcel of its territory. We also need to escape this idea that we are all obliged to give money to Brazil or states of the Amazon. No, you have to give me money because we have the Amazon. Obviously, this is not efficient. What is this money for? Reach what result? This is an answer, adequate answer. And at the same time, the facing of this stakes around the Amazon theme, not something that should be debated only by the Amazonians. The Amazon is a national issue. And the Green Recovery Plan has its intention. As it was mentioned by Laura, put a break on the deforestation and restoration. There's a nuance around this. Want to contain, of course, illegal deforestation that goes very rapidly around national territory, public territory in general, not only in private ones. We have to regulate the land division. But we also need to have an incentive regime to contain legal deforestation. For the illegal ones, that should be considered crime. But for the legal deforestation, an incentive program to show people that it's more interesting to keep the forest standing than destroying it. But this comes to views of the people who live in the Amazon as something abstract. Around 30 million Brazilian inhabitants. The environmental issue is not really faced in Brazil. Second axis of sustainable production, I would like to highlight tourism, that it's very important due to what we saw in the Northeast with Moderator, but we have to think of the procurement of food program to put it in the hand of the people who use for this to be scalable, money and technology for these activities to be able to actually have meaning, importance in our export. And in third place, technology and training have institutions, universities in state and federal levels, fostering of research, this Amazon intelligence over our region, of course, advancing in training, and finally the issue of green infrastructure that Laura mentioned. Going over in a more long-term innovations, for example, as sanitation, for we are looking at the first phase of PRV. Want to leverage 1.5 billion reais in this plan for our states projects. This is feasible because we remember that only the Amazon Fund has 2 billion that are frozen due to irresponsibilities. We have the Northern Fund, we have Sudan, and the international articulation. This is the first phase of PRV, which will officially present July 16th. And we count on participation of all of you. I'd like to thank all the team working on Laura, Tiziana, all the team, states team, because it's a participative project with 9 states of Brazilian Amazon participating. Regional strategy for development. Thank you. I am available. Debates and questions that come. Thank you, Governor. I think you're talking about very important issues on the politics, Amazon, this tension that we have today around the social environmental agenda in the National Congress conducting, high risk of setbacks and significant impacts, not only in the short term, but in the Amazon situation, these contradictions, not only about what we saw, this the debate in the deputy, chamber deputy about Article 1 and indigenous populations, and about environmental licensing. Have to solve the problems. That's not it. Have to understand the difficulty. RV is a good example of it. But it has a lot of Amazon. Now we have a proposal in our hands that shows us challenges and shows us how it will short and medium term as long term, like Laura said. But there's a political understanding, as you said, that is no use. There are no real incentives. Influences the change in mentality of living in the Amazon, and that the quality of life and well-being, economic growth, insertion build a representative role in the country. Brazil has turned their backs on Amazon. Brazilians are more capable of talking about Miami than Belém, for example. there's a distance to something that gives this current identity. Also, in the national point, there's a great interest in the protection of the Amazon. My personal perspective, I'm very happy to say that the Amazon is no longer a place for us to talk about consultative projects in small scale. We need the scaling. We need to insert this in the scope of the national. You can't be a part of the world if you don't know what you want from it. Amazon being protected more than just climate security shows a interesting political positioning of the country, what we call soft power, to understand how country deals with the society and the world in the social community. When you talk about the strategic look to alliance, national and nationally, we have common interest, shared interest, what makes us as Brazil. When Brazil sits with heads of states, when participating in international summits, have to know what unites us with the other heads of states, for example, the United States or China or Europe. Not only the commercial vision, but the vision of participating in the world. So the plan of recovery of the Amazon, very daring step, moment that Brazil is covered by this cloud, doesn't see the world, doesn't let the world see what the Brazilian society wants to do and the low carbon scope. You can't make environmental policies, you can't promote development without democracy. Society is part of the construction. When you say for us to look at the transformation of sectors, to do transition, and I agree, resources are not, for this kickoff, resources are not challenging point of view of a end of the world, it's the beginning of a new country. So by role of the Amazon, Brazil goes to the current world with the Amazon on a leading role. Solutions for current Brazil go through the Amazon. As you said, we can't discuss Brazil without discussing the Amazon. We have to align with contemporaneity. Past brings us here. Fortunately, we have political short sight that is unprecedented in all the agendas as they are owners of truth. And this plan can lead us to of engagement, very important for subnational levels and other players for the exercise of a green sovereignty. Sovereign means work sovereign. We're also responsible. Destroying the Amazon is a responsibility action. We have no commitment. Society, as Laura put, mention of participation, illegal activity, but you also have the challenge of keeping these forests standing. How can we build solutions, discourses, and rhetoric, solutions that everyday people part of this of Brazil that built from the Amazon facing its development challenges. I like this political idea, bringing the Amazon together with Brazil, and the idea of showing the world that we have different, get to know the Amazon. Come here, stand it. Nobody can talk about it better than live there. Important to qualify, understand it, also look at the new players in the room and to mature ways that could convergence and consensus. In politics, consensus is something sophisticated, but a convergence would be a great step in this way. So I understand that as I participated in G7 and the Amazon Fund, the look of the international cooperation still environmental issue, 6, 87, 90, Rio 92. Looking at this perspective, strategy, national cooperation, remember that when we discussed the PP7 around 88, when the world started talking about deforestation of the Amazon, we had a strengthening of the bilateral relations that always been important in the environmental area. I agree with you. National cooperation not apart from cooperate so Brazil can walk with its own feet and do their work as the role in a more sustainable world.
Both the bilateral agreement in the environment was also in the multilateral forums when we built agreement as the Paris Agreement or even the Nagoya Protocol inside the biological university, but to allow us to follow this path of bioeconomy, as you mentioned. So one of the structuring axes, one of the important pathways for the Amazon. In this context, I invite, and especially the Amazon Fund, Germany is co-funder with the Norway of the Amazon Fund. Considering this trajectory of the bilateral cooperation and multilateral cooperation, and in partnership with the World Bank and other programs, I'm going to invite now Jens Brüggemann, who is the Director of Biodiversity, Forest and Climate Programs from the GIZ, that is the International Cooperation Agency from German. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce correctly. Gesellschaft International, right? Something like that. My German is not very good. So welcome. It's a great pleasure to see you again. You have the floor, and I hope you can, in 10 minutes, make your comments, and then we go to the last panelist. Welcome, and it's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you very much, Izabella. And former minister, I'm very happy for the invitation of the Interstate Consortium of Sustainable Development of Legal Amazon to participate in this panel. I'd like to greet the Executive Secretary and the Governor of Maranhão, Flávio, Dino, and the other participants of the panel, Laura, Sophie, and everyone who is watching us on YouTube. I believe this is an interesting opportunity to talk about this topic. And I also would like to congratulate the consortium and about the Green Recovery Plan. I believe that we, in the middle of the pandemic, we have to change the path of the development. In all over the world, there is a Green Deal or something like this, so we do not repeat. These can become concentrations of companies. We need to protect the biodiversity, because I believe that the maintenance of the standing forest is a consequence of the maintenance of the means of life and the traditional activities that are there. So a strong components of the portfolio is the guarantee of the sustainable use of the tropical forest and the recovery of lands through the available tools in the forest code. Allows me to highlight that former Minister Izabella already talked about that Germany is cooperating with Brazil for 60 years, and this cooperation also developed to face together the biggest global problem. It's not only only assisting the development, but we are working together for the great challenges. Brazil is considered one of the 8 global partners of the German cooperation in the world. And now I would like to talk about GIZ. GIZ is a company from the German government for the implementation of the technical cooperation. And please do not confuse this with a financial cooperation through the KRW. We are not funder or financer. We are only a partner to assist policies and programs for training to different levels. The common projects are negotiated and agreed between both governments, and we work in different scales, international and federal, state and municipal, in different actors, players of civil society as in private sector and the academia. And the German international cooperation through the GIZ have supported many ways the green recovery agenda with some projects as bioeconomy and value chains, partnerships for innovations, agricultural activities as in the state of Maranhão. The bioeconomy and value chains with the Ministry of Agriculture has a strong partnership with the states of Acre, Amazonas, Amapá, and Pará. This is an innovation of the social peel and the innovation of Brazil nuts and pirarucu and açaí. And I also would like to give an example. It's a small example, but it highlights how we support the insertion of vulnerable communities in the formal market in a fair and equitable way. An example of this is the campaign I Like the Amazon for the positioning and strengthening of the pirarucu and management of pirarucu in the Amazon. This fish is being traded with an organization of NGOs in the community-based that cooperate with many government and non-governmental partners from the global cooperation. And GIZ complemented this initiative with conscious consumption initiatives, traceability, organic certification, and creation and registration and strengthening of collective brands. So the technical cooperation to improve the access of vulnerable communities and riverside communities to private markets could increase the sales in 18 tons of this fish in 330%. Of course, it is a clear thing that you can scale and you have to scale. For this improvement of the trading to happen in a fair and equitable way, we have to contribute to the articulation of the value chain of pirarucu as a competition with the Amazon food services. We have a strong participation of players of the civil society and the governments that take care of the development of these regional people. We also try to stimulate this partnership with the private sector, trying to find a fair partnership with the providing of raw material by the communities in a win-win relationship. And how does GIZ facilitate the establishment of this cooperation with the private sector? As an instrument for the fostering of private sector that forms the base of the bioeconomy, the GIZ has had good experiences with public-private partnerships. A lot of national and international companies are interested in developing new products and from this biodiversity of the Amazon in Brazil. At the same time, the consumers are more and more sensitive to the social and environmental issues. So we have a great potential for this relationship to have a mutual benefit between companies and cooperatives and associations that favor the environment and the local populations. GIZ facilitates these relationships, preparing the collective ventures in order to indicate management of big companies and supporting the companies to interact in a fair and equitable way in the community. An example of that is the strategic partnership between the Natura and Sunrise and GIZ. They gathered with the objective to strengthen 7 different organizations of extractivists to offer sources of sustainable income for these families to guarantee the supply of the companies with raw materials of high quality for the production of cosmetic products. Another action that stimulates the agenda of green recovery are partnerships with sustainable investment funds, as the initiatives AIMA A+, where we prepare the greatest community ventures, startups, and small companies to access these impact funds. We also work in partnership with the federal government in encouraging the making of public policies for the regional populations, as it is the case of the school lunch and the acquisition of food and nutrition policies for this population. We also employ professionals from public and private sector to rural assistance with qualifications for community entrepreneurial management. We also include the management of preparation for national and international events. For example, business rounds and market prospection events. It's worth mentioning that we can only use the synergies of other projects of the biodiversity, forest, and climate programs, especially the environment and territorial management and rural registration as MAPA. These projects supports the forest codes, and it is very important to reach the validation as the base for traceability of supply chains that is free from deforestation. But it's also very important in terms of restoration of the Cerrado with a great benefiting of the World Bank. GIZ is also assisting BNDES in the management of the Amazon Fund, and we can have more programs strengthened for the green recovery plan in the Amazon. This is my perception that there is an advantage internationally to invest in projects that keep the forest standing. It is a pity that a fund is still blocked. Due to our experience, reactivating the Amazon Fund would be quicker and cheaper than creating new funds. And as a pipeline of projects, you could resume implementing the local projects. To conclude, I believe that you are not surprised that GIZ and the consortium are constructing a memorandum of understanding with the objectives to perform technical cooperation activities that should be planned together with technical corporations that are in force that can act in this partnership. We want and we thank the opportunity to form these partnerships and gain scale with some of the policies that are ongoing. Thank you very much, and I give the floor back to Izabella. Thank you very much, Jens, for your speech. But not only the technical cooperation of GIZ involving civil society, the private sector, and the importance of the rural registration, that without the cooperation, we wouldn't be able to build this registration and the system as we did. And this is a very concrete example on how the cooperation, the alliance, and the credibility, when you have a history well told of mutual cooperation, allows this flexibility about priorities and interests that involve not only the national issue, but also the global benefits. So you are always a great partners in the Amazon Fund. It's important to observe that the continuation of the Amazon Fund in the short term can be a more efficient strategy than getting broader arrangements that will go to the subnational. So this is a political challenge to find an interlocution way in Brazil with the federal government so we can come back the Amazon Fund.
Message is great. Say something that we almost understand. Global crisis, biodiversity, climate, environmental degradation of the planet, it will only be solved with cooperation. Can't solve a global issue individually. On the other hand, Also highlight how the plan is, the climate strategy, protection of the biodiversity important. How can they be more humanity? Sure. I'd like to think talked about the technical cooperation and financial cooperation under pela German have to organize and with looks like the most strategy we have on our table very important. Credibility building of nation with Brazil. Thank you for your attention. Now let's go to the other side of this debate. So I invite the Bank so she can Naudeau role organism bioeconomy and implementation green recovery plan. Have the floor around 10. Welcome. It's a pleasure to again show us how to go to the real world. Long-term bank in the Amazon development program of thought in direct relationship with the bank, also with biodiversity national fund, having law on dedicated to the environment started being initiated in 86, part of the foundation in the beginning of my career. So welcome at the floor around 10 back to the talk with the panelists. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to thank Asian bioeconomy event. Say hello to authorities president, governor, Laura, Jens, all the participants. I have 4 main messages. By focus on economy, biodiversity, sustainable development. Topics are in our main objective, reduction of poverty, share prosperity in a sustainable way. Talk timely. As they know, World Bank Group second action plan for climate change, June 2nd, 2021 to 5. Very ambitious, represents a change, effort, green project, make whole economies so focused, full to focus on impact. Text investments in bioeconomy as an integral part of larger agenda. It's even more critical now with this post-COVID scenario globally and in Brazil. In my second message, beyond the global plan of action for climate change, plan has an important agenda in Brazil. It has mentioned several examples, collaboration, members, public, maybe don't know so well the World Bank, explain how we operate in general. We engage first project, bonds, and strong movement in technical and development and sharing of knowledge, support projects from the federal government and subnational contexts, but always in cooperation with the federal government. Zones have the most positive impact in resilience, nature, in all the sectors, and also to guarantee in any environmental possible. One of our comparative advantages, part of our identity as an international organism, are able to bring global expertise, both approach based on evidence, creation of policy. Based on this type of operation, are loan loans that we have executed today, distant project around 5-6 billion American dollars. Many of these projects support farming action, recuperation, green development, including energy sectors, urban development, risk of disasters management, sanitation, and transportation systems, among others. Supporting actions, tax sustainability and environmental sustainability, and also a integral part of our have offered budget support to Mato Grosso and Amazonas states for them to result in sustainability, tax, and environmental at the same time. Another ongoing project that I should mention, sustainable landscape in the Amazon, working to expanding areas of legal protection into area of restoration, sustainable management in the Amazon. Analytical works started work analytic green development for this recuperation post regional and federal levels. The Amazon region working on economic memorandum studies point poverty and innovation could and how could trade off demand policy both made available in 2022 and strengthen our engagement with government and other players. Main third message, critical, all of us, strong innovation. We have to promote of markets, green products and technologies, change in behavior of promising. One of the innovations about risks of biodiversity being considered financial risk are finalizing a study on this topic shows that Brazilian banks are exposed to loss of biodiversity. Implications should be considered. Looking for opportunities for digital technology in all the sectors. The importance of digital transformation has been stressed by the COVID crisis. Correct way of strengthening ecosystemical services and the implementation of policies catalyze green growth in key sectors. In a general way, leverage totally innovation will for our collective success, scalability in green recovery and the sustainable development agenda. To be a pioneer in this, and in the World Bank, we are ready to support as much as we can. Fourth and last message, leverage private sector well, also necessary financing investment, strengthened bioeconomy exceeds what the public sector demands a strong involvement of the private sector. Systematical approach vital. This is a priority for the bank group. I'd like to highlight National Financial Corporation works directly with the private sector, the bank, World Bank that works with the public sector. Policy studies supports the partnerships, public and private sector, important reforms and innovative financing could help stimulate private development. Federal level, strengthening energy and mineral sectors, technical efficiency, adequation of infrastructure, and climate resilience, energy and mining sectors. World Bank is strongly invested in the economy agenda, sustainable development agenda, world and Brazil, federal and subnational levels, ready to do more through our knowledge agenda, consulting, financing of policy based on evidence, and our focus innovative approaches so we can reach ambitious goals and leverage positive impacts in both public and private sector and civil society. Thank you, Izabella. I'm very anxious, part of the panel and the discussion.
Thank you, Izabella. I think you had a wonderful job, not only facing the contemporary challenge that we have today and in this reorganization of vision based on the technical and political expertise of the World Bank to deal with this diversity of countries with the national realities, but you also highlight in your four messages the importance of knowing how to deal with the world and these national realities. You brought Brazil with a great domain of information when you show, for example, the sustainable landscape that I remember that in my time we negotiated with the World Bank, the global environmental facilities that demanded from Brazil that to give more money in the GEF to make more resources viable for the Amazon. This is very interesting how you show the national maturing. This is political maturing of Brazil to understand how we can advance in the international cooperation instruments and the partnerships and alliance to have more return. This win-win that we like to mention in the political view of engaging and real commitment that goes beyond the territory and also to global impacts. So I think this is extremely relevant, and I like this idea to approach the new pathways of consumption and production that goes from traceability of the value chains, but more than this is the value added and working with new agendas that are in the face of environmental problems of the global impact on the loss of biodiversity that present the efficient use of natural resources. We know that 90% of the biodiversity in the world is associated to these insufficiency of use of natural resources, and 56% of the global carbon emissions are associated to this. Science is showing that, and she's showing clearly that we have to connect things. While we don't connect things with expertise and engagement of other players from private sectors, civil society, since we have new economic activities for the impact of technology and how you retrofit, how you re-adequate important economic sectors as mining and energy in the climate efficiency context, for example, in the scope 3 of mining. It is a huge challenge from the service chain perspective. It involves mining, and Amazon is strategy for that. I think you gave a big picture on the roles and the challenges and the commitments of the World Bank in this trajectory, and a look to the subnational for the importance of the Green Recovery Plan of an interlocution based in expertise and in the modalities of international cooperations that goes from actions and loans and the reaction of subnational with the federal government. This has to be modernized in Brazil, but this is a set of interests of social and economic development. So this interlocution seems extremely important, this new movement of the bank, this new global thing, preparing for this future that is already here. But how the governors, we in Brazil in the Amazon, are going to benefit from a contemporary interlocution with the World Bank. Thank you very much for your words. I will have to control the time here in the panel in Brazil. You are more than used to that. I am going to do this. If you agree, the 4 panelists, I would like to be in the screen, and I have 2 guiding questions from the organization. But I also have my own questions and an important challenge coming from the audience. There are many questions. I'm going to read the questions, and I will invite you to make an evaluation of what is relevant and the final remarks. And then I will call the other governors through the video. And the last one will be Flávio Dino, if he agrees. Is that okay? I'm going to read these 2 questions that are structured here. That in fact, what are the implications and recommendations in the short term because of the proposal of the Green Recovery Plan coming from the consortium of governors of the Amazon, and what is the work agenda based on your experience? A concrete agenda that we can start with the construction of this panel. Jens already talked about the memory of understanding about the consortium and GIZ. Sophie also said that the World Bank brings these elements for this construction. So this is the short-term agenda or the reactivation of the Amazon Fund. It's important, this was already signalized, but associated with these 2 questions. The questions from the audience come in this direction. How is the articulation with the OTCA, with the Organization of Treaty of Amazon Corporation in the context of the Green Recovery Plan that I understand it is important for treating the Amazon basin? Is this contemplating, this is a good question since the OTCA is the only international organism that is a result of a cooperation agreement that is headquartered in Brazil. How does the consortium work? Do you have international cooperations for the state of the Amazon? How the Green Recovery Plan has the fiscal incentives in the states of the federation? Do you have any reference, any examples? What source of financial resource the consortium intends to gather to put the Green Recovery Plan in practice? So these are questions from the audience. So instead of segmenting this, I think there is a richness in the questions. I'm going to call you to address your words and analyze in your perspective. Inverting the panel, I will start with international cooperation by Jens, and then Sophie, and then Laura and Flávio at last. So in your answer, you can have 1 or 2 questions or final remarks in the perspective of this dialogue, so I can promote the closing later. I'm trying to optimize the time here. We are inside the time, but in order to gain a more dynamic, so you can analyze this in a more integrated way with many suggestions that your speech brought to us. And the provocation from the audience. Okay, Jens, you have the floor. You have the screen, actually. Thank you very much, Izabella. These are very important questions, and Izabella already said that we have a memorandum of understanding with the consortium. This is the first step. We are in the phase of elaborating a joint conjunction plan, because this way we can gain scale, not that the good experiences can apply also to other parties, but we have to use the synergies as the ongoing initiatives by both sides. And this topic of synergies, to me, it is a key thing in the international cooperation. I believe that we are reaching to an end of particular ideas or isolated ideas. I see a lot of synergies with other initiatives from other donors, and I believe this could be really a way to gain scale and to be aligned, to see in what way we can make things in a complementary way or through this scale, because we have good examples. For example, the co-funding of the World Bank and Norway, the co-funding that is much more than the contribution of Germany, or the restoration of the savannah. And I believe that this is something for the short term, to gather forces, to join forces. And we have to harvest what is ongoing and try to create what can be viable to include the objectives of our green recovery plan. The second point that I wanted to make is that I believe that there is much more international interest than offering funds for results. And as I see it, this has an implication, because it is a challenge to the partners in Brazil to show these things. So I have no doubt that we are capable of doing this, but at some moments, we need technical cooperation or a training that we can reach quicker to the results that can be made viable globally through investments or donations or loans. So I believe that the role is so important that there are funds available for the Amazon, and this is the role of the technical cooperation that can play an important role to this. And that's why I'd like to offer to think together in the development of projects collectively. The private-public partnerships are projects with basically German resources, with connections with Brazilian companies, as Natura, as I mentioned. But we don't have yet a program or a scheme here in Brazil to facilitate this type of partnerships. And I believe that this should be very interesting to facilitate the access to the market and a more mobilization of the companies about what they are doing and bringing more knowledge about that. And lastly, I would like to emphasize the role of Brazil in the world. I believe that what is happening now in Brazil with these ideas and these plans and these initiatives, the world needs to know. And we from the international cooperation can be a vehicle along with you to show these experiences and the exchange of experience with other countries to strengthen their cooperation and show this in other levels. So this also can be an input for others to improve their practices. And this exchange is always beneficial as I say. And finally, I can offer a small project. We have a project with the OTCA, and we are going to work on the biodiversity plan now. And if there is any interest, I can facilitate the connection with the OTCA to engage in their green recovery plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jens. Brought excellent perspectives on the construction of a new understanding model that work with international cooperation. Know how important this is to have a structuring step of the alliance in medium and long term. I liked your suggestion for the consortium. Understand the negotiations, dialogues, the small projects involving potential, and the need for us to use happening here in Brazil, as you said, to publicize it internationally, for Brazil to leave this black cloud because of that is going on because of deforestation and the several other things that is happening. Mobilization, the Amazon is representative of what is focused by many authorities in Brazil is contrary to this idea of developing sustainably. This moment of transition in Brazil, society, other Brazilian players are getting together, being assertive to what Brazil has always built and what the country represents internationally, with the solidarity to the world, a new perspective, putting a brake on deforestation and inequalities, and advancing what we have been capable of doing, reduction of deforestation, increasing emissions of greenhouse gases, eradication of hunger. This is all concrete. It's not a dream. It showed that we can do. They're going to zoom this agenda, strength that comes from assertion of the Brazilian people in the world. Very generous people and very creative people can face these challenges, diversity that the Amazon presents as a current society. The alignment, I'm a fond of Flávio Dino's speech, says that we have to have Amazon as a part of that is going to be built in the present. We have to make the right decisions today. And the pandemic brought the future to the present. Accelerated, nothing is intangible anymore. This is real. On the other hand, I think you provoke us in very important about the role funds-oriented results are real commitments and avoiding setbacks. Brazil has to have conscience how progress deal with this in globally important. We're going back to extreme poverty and employment, public spaces of democracy with this dialogue with the British society. We have to stop it, align with the future. Thank you for perfect Portuguese, Jens. If I spoke German like this, I would be very happy. Thank you for engagement, commitment with us here. And I have a personal conviction, my learning here, that Governor Flávio Dino will lead this low carbon train, new moment of international cooperation in Brazil. Let's go now to Sophie. I talked about you intimately, but I didn't say that you were manager in the World Bank in Brazil. Any worked in Asia, have experience dealing with challenge of development, not only social, how we see this idea of human development in the world, just realigning of human development, about inequalities, but also criticism situations and what the world is seeing the effects of migrations provoked not only by the global crisis environment, but more about tensions that demand receiving and strategic look on how they're going to deal with, together with health and climate. These are current topics, not because of your experience in Egypt, but also the Middle East and Africa. Now let's talk about the green side of the world, and I hope you can help us in challenge and also contribute to the Amazon to be a driver for the green side, oriented by not only Brazil, but the countries in the Amazon basin can cooperate global view once we're all interconnected. I'll give you the floor. I have several questions here. I'm provoking you here. Thank you for your presence. Have the screen, have the floor. So, and then we'll move on to final considerations by Laura and Governor and the questions by the audience. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you, Izabella. True, it's a great pleasure to work in Brazil more than a year now. Because of the pandemic, I hadn't been able to travel as much as I wanted to. Longer term, but I would like to highlight we don't have a lot of time to answer questions. I want to leave enough time for Laura and Governor to have their final words. Based in Brasilia, we are available to continue the discussion. Hugely important. We need more time to make it deep. For now, I would like to say that, as I mentioned, we have several examples multiply in Brazil. Some of the reforms that we support in the Amazon and Mato Grosso, we could replicate in other parts of the Amazon. Are reforms that are mainly to strengthen control system states, deforestation, and forest fires. Also report the approach to decrease the incentives to burn and the incentives to protect, because it's all about incentive, negatives and positive. Type of reforms could be replicated in other states based on demand, subnational contexts. Also ready to explore more innovation, technology, leverage the private sector, looking at financial products that are innovator, not only short term, but also medium term, reach these ambitions. So I'm available here in Brazil. I wait more opportunity to talk about such an important topic. Thank you. Show us this general context, highlights the part of the bank is in, yeah, it's because it's reachable. Continue a debate with the technical recovery plan with the speakers from the bank, teaching about fine tuning, precise look, where there are the short opportunities of language. correct language opens a lot of doors. Because you have to speak the same language as the person you dialogue with. World Bank has always been a facilitator situation. We're also looking at development. Look on development by the banks. Very good. The understanding of the BNDES on corporation, the point of view of loan operations, there are innovative combinations with partnerships with the World Bank and other development banks. And there is a very important perspective maturing of looks operations, doing this, making this move forward more efficiently in a more permanent way, step by step with the building block, structuring block. But the World Bank has always been very effective. This structured way in this country. Innovation, very well. Brazil has to look at it in a strategic way. Development, operation, short sight and debate here, technologies, etc. How this changes the reality of investment, how this changes the reality of access to money, international money, development. We have to look at this. And the issue of technology, international commerce. Governor and Laura talked about the perspective of economy of the standing forest and bioeconomy, circular economy, green economies, and the role in the export. Still, new commercial routes and valid supply chains, as we say in the more current lexicon about traceability and demand for market to consumer market. A huge array of conversations you could have. I'm sure that you will travel a lot around after the crisis. Doctorate the Amazon. The governor will make you an expert, and it's completely worth it. One of the most fascinating, maybe the most fascinating world. And Brazil has to get. Thank you, Laura. Now I have some questions there, but I have two questions focused on PRV. I'd like to have your final considerations and react to what has been said. Then we'll go to Governor Flávio Dino to close up. Thank you. I'm very happy to again here. Thank you, Izabella. Great to hear you guys, Sophie again, Governor Flávio Dino. Questions are great. I have some brief comments. Financing, be clear that for this plan to be implemented, several steps to have short-term results, essential for this to be feasible in the medium and long term. For this to happen and for the population to feel socioeconomical impacts and for the environmental impacts to happen, so we can quickly deforestation, for example, we are going to articulation that very well done with players and internal and external resources, public and private development banks. Everybody will have to be involved. Very intrinsic way. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for us to have concrete results, and we risk not being able to have continuity plan in the next years. Plan itself, the idea of a recovery plan, already comprises this articulation of players. Articulation with university, research center, companies, imperative, act on social movement, government, all its bodies, federal, regional, and state, municipal. Hard for us to think about using all the potentialities without the articulation of all these players. Aligned with what Mariana Mazzucato, professor at University College in London, talks about the economy oriented by missions. The development policy oriented by missions can achieve. There's that think about development policy, development of the industry, designing incentives, what gives the incentives some sectors, economical sectors for them to develop. But many times when the policy designed like this, that sectors appropriate based on their interests. Their interests go over what they of the plan are originally. Many times policies are hostage to the sector that maybe aren't even strategic in the 21st century. The idea of a green recovery plan is aligned with this that when we have a mission, environmental and social mission of overcoming these gaps, fighting regional inequalities, having work done to close these gaps to forestation. Missions are an excellent way of inverting the logic of the development policies, where we need to articulate the investments and the players for this objective. The sectors, the innovation come from this process. As Mazzucato showed, she has the example of taking the man to the moon as doing something similar to that and creating the articulation of players and private and public, university, research centers, governmental agencies. The innovations that come from are not even the ones we imagined that would rise. When we have a plan like this and we are able to articulate all these players, when we have a common objective, we have much more chance of achieving success. The diversification of the productive structure, development of technologies, and in fact being able to reach a structure that is much more diversified with the exporting performance that is much more diversified and better. The second half of the 21st century or from 2030 established this medium and long-term horizon. This plan is aligned with what we have been thinking and what has been thought worldwide, saving these peculiarities between the states, because it has to be worked very well and stood very well. First phase, allocate resources and different criteria for the allocation of the project. On one hand, on fighting of deforestation axis, region, how much each state has of forests. So on the other hand, we would be looking at the socio-economical impact, the number of people, well, the allocation of resources thought based on that. And we have to understand the weight that the player has in this financing and how be able to really make this feasible. And thinking about values, projects that are feasible, are possible, financed, but not losing ambition, daring positioning that we need something that has impact that is scalable. I think this governor's speech is important. have to think big and understand how the Amazon really is strategic for Brazil, for the world, and have capability of, if we design it well, to attract the investment that are necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone who worked for this plan and that discussed the working group and the secretaries of environment, the secretary of infrastructure of the state government, and everyone who contributed to the project with ideas. And Izabella for mediating this panel so well and bringing so many elements. So Sophie and Jens, it was a good learning to hear from you. And we do have to think on how to talk more about this and to think about concrete elements in what is in the scope of the actions of the World Bank and the private sector in general, because there are many technical cooperations that make sense inside the framework brought by the Green Recovery Plan. So thank you very much, Laura, for your participation and your capacity to analyze and signalize some perspectives in the short term. And this means a leadership with a lot of delicacy. And we are going to move in a country. The country is living so contradictory moments. When you talk about Mazzucato, I remember her first or third book, I don't remember, talks about the value of everything, the discussion of values, of pricing, not the price, but the value. And we were members of the board of the economic board of the United Nations, and it was a pleasure to participate in the new pathways of the economy of the world. And in her last book, she reminds us the mission economy. And it is very interesting how this moonshot, the example of the moon, how it is a guide to change capitalism. There are many people from your generation to talk about the donuts, and we have to stop talking about the GDP that grows without limit. We need to have a reasonability that the planet cannot deal with this limitless growth, exploiting the nature as we are today. What China consumed in cement in 2012, 2013 is equivalent to what the United States consumed in the whole 20th century. So it's important to realize how this consumption of is shown for the G7 and the G20. We have with the fact sheets showing the behavior of natural resources consumption in the last 50 years of the countries. It's amazing. You can see growth of the populational growth, and you have to promote a new route to promote development that Mazzucato calls being a mission economy, that she brings the co-responsibility. There is the government. We are all co-responsible for everything. So it's extremely interesting when you bring the private sector, when there is a change. In the past, everything was dialoguing and the government coordinated. Now the society has to coordinate, the government has to coordinate. And this seems to me a stage in the new political stage that the consortium offers us. When you talk about the heterogeneity of the states, this is also a regional challenge. So it's important to look at these many perspectives and explore the alternatives that the Amazon has. Brazil is a country with alternatives. This is the political asset of the country. We don't have one or two pathways. We have many different pathways with convergences of roadmaps and interests, and for the expression of a more sustainable and low carbon world, but for its expression of new humanism. You, Governor, you are a humanist person, so I give you the final words so we can hear later, after the government speech, we have the speech of other governors in video, and then we can close the panel. I want to thank and say goodbye from now on, and thank for the invitation to moderate this panel in this partnership with the agreement and the consortium of the governors, and the possibility of seeing again good friends and saying again, Sophie, welcome to Brazil. All the best to you, Governor Flávio Dino. You have the floor, and thank again for the invitation to join you in this such an important initiative, not only for the Amazon, but for Brazil and for the world. That renews our strategy, that we have a way out in the short term. Thank you very much for your leadership, and you have the floor, and have a great afternoon, everyone who followed us so far. Well, Izabella, I just want to thank you for the moderation of this panel, the active moderation, always with relevant comments, giving all the threads that conducted these debates. I want to thank all the institutions, Sophie, Naudeau, and Jens, and of course, Laura, for the rich dialogue. I consider that these final words about hope is vital, because in fact, the abstract that dominates the concrete, from the abstraction, you can extract the motivation that is capable to change the realities that sometimes are so difficult. I also consider, Jens, that the recovery of the Amazon Fund would be highly efficient, and we presented judicial action in the Supreme Court with this objective. Once the political environment is so difficult in Brazil, it is so evident that I don't need to have 30 minutes to prove this reality. Unfortunately, this is something that every day produces new evidences that are undeniable, and in a way that the judicial way is theoretical. So we have a judicial action in judicial lawsuit in the Supreme Court to create the conditions of internal regulation in the Brazilian law, especially about the revocation of those decrees that dealt with the governance and transparency of the Amazon Fund. The Justice Rosa Weber will be the rapporteur, so it's much easier to put the Amazon Fund working again than creating new mechanisms. There's no doubt about that. But in the Green Recovery Plan, we dealt with the financial mechanisms, that we have our own financial mechanisms from the regional consortium, because we need to have one, because there are the states and we need to have the region. So we have the region as the executive secretary, and our own funds, that is the financial mechanisms in the region. But we consider that these should take place with the existing instruments, whether from the government or from private sector or international. The role of the private sector, there is no doubt about the importance. The role of World Bank by its expertise and their calling, and the practical role that they have developed, and we already developed all these. There was a question about the organization of the Amazon Treaty, and we are going to put as a goal to strengthen this relationship, because everyone has to be seen as partners in this construction. And we remember that, as Laura said, that the plan allows this junction, this joining forces, and everything takes planning. Of course, it's not so vertical and crystal clear as in the past, because it's more than currents, that everything that is solid is dissolves in the air. So we have a dimension of horizontalities and dynamism in a proportion that some people think that they deny the concept of planning. The idea of a commission is the old concept of planning that is updated now, and our constitution says that planning is mandatory for the public sector and indication and recommended to the private sector, since it is a market economy partially. So we are not going to discuss what this means, but undoubtedly the planning is essential. And the Green Recovery Plan is inserted in this effort to construct a paradigm that results on the use of natural resources, but this can happen in a reasonable and sustainable way, in an equitable way between generations. This is not something selfish and the other generations can deal with what we do. So this is the denial of the concept of humanism for ourselves and to those who will come after us. So in these assumptions, the consortium is presenting on the next 16th under the leadership of Laura Carvalho, who is the technical coordinator, and she will be the speaker person of the academic debates. She has our contact and our mandate because we trust in her technical capacity and political capacity to make these mediations with our teams in the executive secretary of the consortium to find all the agencies so we can generate all the necessary resources. Izabella proposed as one of the questions that the next step in the short term is to find money. It's very simple. We have the projects, we have the governance, we just need the money. That's basically it. And we have to size these urgency from the assumption of the importance of this topic and the dimension of the hostility against the Amazon, against the environment, and against the traditional populations. So the concept of time is not dictated by us. The concept of time is dictated by the contingencies. And the Brazilian contingencies are dramatic in some aspects, and they generate emergencies in high promotions. So it cannot be the short term, but it at the same time, it cannot be only a beautiful conceptual debate because we have 30 million people and 60% of the Brazilian territory. So when you look at Brazil, 60% corresponds to the legal Amazon.
This by itself shows urgency I'm referring to. Thank you all for watching us. I made a mistake in this. Will actually now. The floor will come to me, and I'll present the views. Finishing. Yes, on my behalf, I'm already finished. You're perfect. The mistake is mine. Yes, I enjoy your command very much, Izabella. I'd like to thank the creation of the forum, challenge 16 panel, lot of things on. In my perspective, Flávio, Amazon is there. Brazil is back because Amazon is there with this daring generation and subnational effort. Florida represents this very well. The strength of this country that is coming another way and it will be visible to the world. This Green Recovery Plan is a part of it. The mentality change. Face the challenges, the world, the global crisis, experimenting COVID lesser of the crisis. Climate crisis is much larger precedent. The inequalities crisis. You have to understand that it's all interconnected. We need a mentality change. Those new global solidarity, new relationship with nature, humanism. Humanity needs to face the challenge that many are calling green enlightenment. Not because it's green, because you have a new relationship with nature, developing and growing part of nature. Man needs to make peace. It's very unfair and the degradation of nature has never been so quick. I mentioned the generational issue. Decisions are made today. Wrong decision today will impact the future. When we focus non-strategic view on the energy planning for the country means to possibilities in the pay more because of that. We are paying less. Also add the cost to the social part of the society. So society needs to understand how things are connected. A lot of successful show that this is a way of having international dialogue, looking at how other people are doing other things and think of what we are going to do. Mistakes and successes, because we will be able to improve our performance. Brazil is a very country full of inequalities, and the Amazon must bring this new perspective. Country that actually faces transition not as a mechanism to own things, it's a mechanism to transformation challenges are putting on our table here. Centuries transformation and how we live, digital transformation is very important. And A, it seems to me that you are opening political moment talking about development of Brazil, international perspective, but also public management environment. The environment area also needs a change in mentality, dealing with what comes ahead, extremely necessary. We have to think about sustainable development. Sustainability must orient the decision, not something hard that I can call for when it's needed. Grandson, they have a huge possibility to live in 2100. So your attitude today determines the heritage of your grandchild. What is the world wish for your grandchild? It's so fun. Let's think of the reality of our families and the desire want for them. It's our responsibility, not being intangible as we used to talk about in our generation, the last century. This is part of our daily lives. And with education, go to showing off the videos of Mato Grosso, the governor of Roraima, the governor of Pará, and the governor of Amazonas, who will close the forum. Thank you for the attention, the participation, engagement. And Brazil is in a new way, and this comes with sustainable Amazon, all of us. Shows that Brazil should and must look into current society that, apart from what some fools have a tendency of characterizing Brazil, we have to bring solutions to the world, not dialoguing with things that are part of the process. Very interesting. We have to go ahead. The strength of our democracy, governor, as you always tell us, have to see this new moment of the Third Republic and all the people to understand what it is to make politics, to be a political player, be a part of the history of the country. Let's continue dreaming, and they will not take this from us. Try to make it possible in a short term. Is thank you for your leadership and engagement of all the subnational scope with states of the Amazon. This is very interesting impact. Laura, for your leadership, your engagement. I always knew Laura as his own daughter. Now it's inverted. Now I'm Laura's aunt. Flávio, thank you very much. Sophie, Jens, great to have you here. Thank you for the organization, consortium, and the realization of this forum. So I give you the floor so we can watch the video. Thank you. I wish you health, peace, bless your hearts. Let's have good things for the country. Thank you. This forum dedicated to innovation and bioeconomy, very important moment of challenge for Brazil, especially for the Brazilian Amazon. Our country lives a difficult moment from the sanitary crisis, but we need strategy development that true generate opportunity for companies, for entrepreneurs, workers. Innovation, bioeconomy are ways, vector that could convert Brazil out dark page inequalities, social, regional, be able to go on this avenue of social progress. Government of Maranhão, this forum, have many policies that face these themes talked about here, biotechnology and bioeconomy. We participate in this regional effort, consortium governors of legal Amazon. Value these possibilities of dialogue and about urgency over the urgency must be convergences so we can advance. Democracy has a plurality of idea of proposals, but also demands pacts so we can, through this consensus, even though they are transitory, advance of projects that bring benefits that are concrete population, especially for the needed the most. Part millions and tens of millions, hundreds of millions of Brazilian people who need public policies to reach higher levels of rights. Thank you. Organized this very successful forum. Wish it could repeat itself, bring concrete consequences to Amazon. State of Mato has a lot of legal station in our state. God and effort. State Secretariat of Environment. We have conquered important results last year. Continue to work this, recognizing our forests have for the state of Mato planet. We are a great producer. Continue to and to play our part to care for our environment, environmental assets that are also very important for the state, for Brazil, and the planet. This way, I am sure our contribution important that is sustainability. All the people participating in the important forum, ideas and everything that has been said here, has been presented here, bring important contributions, and it can add value, environment, lives, biome, states in the region, so we can all gain the economic growth and environmental preservation, and specifically for Mato Grosso, such an important food production for all of us. Thank you. Hello, my friends. I say hello to all the governors in the consortium of technical innovations, widen bioeconomy state of Roraima. Linking production with sustainability, have the environmental finds actions of state government, preservation of the environment, value, create companies, people, and producers, maintenance, and forests. So launched the Roraima 20 objective, the initiatives based on sustainability. We have to always work with technological innovations, and bioeconomy is extremely important. Amazon continued production center. We have 20 million sellers in Amazon the opportunity to work. State government, I'm a partner relationship cordial between governors, society in Brazil. The innovation forum in bioeconomy, Amazon represented a rich moment of sharing of ideas, focus, promotion of sustainable ideas for the development of legal Amazon. Forum of investment in bioeconomy opened a discussion very important to World Forum of Economy happened in the state of Pará, October 18th and 20th. We're all invited. In the forum in October, we will also discuss important aspects as a restoration of productive activities oriented by green economy, social, economically, socially fair. I really wanted to forward this closing of the forum to congratulate all the people involved here. Everything that has been discussed here is of both the state of Amazonas and we have specialists involved talking about economy, investment, finance, discussions on bioeconomy, on gave so we can implement for Industry 4.0 in this Amazonas. I'd like to highlight the step, find this way, conciliation between development and environmental protection. Plan of recovery, green plan, recovery plan, designing development, creating battle against the deforestation and forest fires and recovery of these areas.
I have no doubt that we are advancing in this agenda, and once again, I want to congratulate everyone who is involved in this debate, all the organizers and all the experts.